Hello everybody, this is September from the Thunderwing and the PTS server. In this video we're going to take a look at the 4.5 update changes coming to Archeage in North America and EU. Okay, so first you should know that the 4.5 patch is actually coming out in Korea in January of 2018. And Tryon is basically lagging behind by about 6 months, which means then North America and EU, we probably will not see this patch until around summertime. Still, there is actually some very interesting stuff here in this patch, and on the paper, I kind of get a feeling like XL maybe started listening to us. So to that end, we're going to be taking a look at these major patch changes and evaluate them against what we as gamers have been asking for. First, I would like to give some credit where credit is due, and that is to Mark at omnom.io. Omnom.io is the #1 site if you would like to get information about what is going on in Korea. Mark sits down, does some translations, and brings it to us in a well-formatted way that has got the attention of a lot of players. So definitely stop over to omnom.io. Let Mark know you really appreciate his work. As somebody that creates content as well, I know it means a lot every time you hear it. He also has a Discord, Twitter, and Facebook for omnom.io. So if that's more of your thing, let him know there. Okay, so on to the meat and potatoes of this video for Archeage 4.5. First, I'm going to basically take the same format that omnom.io has laid out. We're going to detail the changes as he has put them, and I'll add in anything that I know that's not in those changes. Then I will evaluate these changes, in my opinion, if it's great, good, meh, bad, or just absolute crap. So basically that is a scale of 1 to 5, 5 being great, 1 being just crap. So if you'd like to follow along and rate these things yourself, please pull out a piece of paper or a notepad and write down what you think of each one of these changes as we go, and then at the end of this video we can compare notes and see where we agree or disagree. First up is the skill revamp. This topic in general really could have its own video. And I hope that once 4.5 hits or goes out in Korea, we actually start seeing people, the true theory crafters out there really break it down into the nitty-gritty for us. But if you follow my channel or watch my Twitch streams, you'll know that I pretty much always shied away from giving advice when it comes to PvP, classes, or skill advice. It just simply isn't my thing. I am a player, though, and I do have an opinion here. Now, I can't talk about each skill and whether it's good or bad or crap. One, that would take forever because there's so many changes. And two, I don't really have that innate understanding that the other people out there, the true theory crafters, would have. So I'm going to leave that to them. But I do play this game, and I have seen firsthand the imbalances between classes. For instance, you've got the Battle Rage character who face rolls 1, 2, 3, and you're dead. Then you have the Mage who bubbles you and drops a meteor on you while you're still floating in the middle of the air. Easy wins. So the class imbalances that has been something that has been plaguing this game for over 2 years. We have got some minor tweaks over the years, and we've gotten some additional skill changes like the Ancestral skill changes, as well as the abyssal skills, but in the end, the imbalance has been pretty pronounced. So the imbalance has been something that XL has been trying to address for actually quite some time now. They actually reached out to the Korean players in what they called FGT, or Focused Group Testing, and they actually invited the Korean player bases to the headquarters to play the game and talk about different builds. We have also heard that the same type of FGT testing is supposed to be coming to North America players through some sort of testing server run by Tryon. We don't really know when that's going to be, but Tryon has mentioned in one of the live streams that is something that they plan on doing. Additionally, the changes outlined here at omnom.io aren't actually set in stone. So the lines of communication do appear to be open, and all in all, that is a good thing. So on the subject of the skill revamp, I say it's about time, and that's a good thing, giving this a rating on my 1 to 5 scale of 4 or good. Next up, we're going to talk about new items. So in this section, what we see is that they're going to be adding new Tier 3 Lunagems. They're also going to add specific Lunagems for the wrist and the waist slot, like we used to have, as well as the Halcyona and the Halcyona necklaces and the cloak's ability to go up to Eternal grade. So along with this info, we're actually getting a change to Lunagems. So once that they are unsealed, they are bind on pickup, but you can simply reseal them by using a transmuter and making them unbound, and you can put them on the auction house or trade them or whatever you want to do with them. Okay, so let's take a look at the new Tier 3 Lunagems. And, oh man, I feel a rant coming on here. So, new Tier 3 Lunagems, it does sound great and all, but us players here in North America and EU right now, we're sacked with a severe lack of Lunarite. We can't even afford to make all the Tier 2 stuff, and God knows how precious XL is going to believe their Tier 3 gems to be. So if we're going to follow the same logic that's in the current system and say, hey, we're going to need 50 of our Tier 2 Lunarites, which is the superior Lunarites, to make 1 Tier 3 Lunarite, and it takes 20 Tier 3 Lunarites to make 1 Tier 3 Lunagem, that means currently we're going to need 1,000 of our current top tier Lunarites, Tier 2 or superior, to make a single Tier 3 Lunagem. And at the current rate of North America EU Lunarite, that is just simply impossible. I would bet that not even on all the servers in all the regions, all the servers of a specific region like North America or EU, there is not enough Lunarite on there to even make one weapon fully gemmed. I mean, we're talking about 8,000 Tier 2 Lunarites. I doubt that we've ever seen that much sell in a day or even be listed in a day. So let's push aside our region's lack of Lunarite and just assume that by the time that we actually get 4.5, we'll actually have a patch that allows the masses of people to catch up. We know that in Korea as well as Russia, the Lunarites are mainly coming from the metallic crates, and the metallic crates are dropping like candy. So in Korea, there's been screenshots of the auction house that show the Auroria metallic crates, which are around 25, 30 gold on our servers, are priced at 1 gold each. 1 gold. On the Russian servers, they're even less than 1 gold. Those things are dirt cheap. Dirt cheap on the other regions. In our region, for whatever reason, we do not have the same drop rates. So let's assume that by the time 4.5 comes, we will have somehow fixed this problem. Which means that all in all, in this section, we have ranked Tier 3 Lunagems, rank 3, whatever you want to call that. We have more options to gem our wrist and our waist. We have a higher grade Halcyona necklace and cloak, which means, in essence, more content. I mean, sure, it's grindy as all hell, but it is still content. And content, nevertheless, is something that we all could use. Okay, content is content. I'll take it. This section here, the Lunagem or the additional item changes, new items, is going to get a rating of good or 4 out of 5. Next up, we have regrading and gear gap changes, as well as failed regrades. There's a lot to talk about here. What we have in 4.5 is an increased regrade rates and items that simply do not blow up. Well, they kind of blow up, but they only half blow up. So a failed regrade, instead of destroying the items, it just enters a new state which is called damaged. Which basically means that the item can still be used as a weapon, it can still be bought and sold, and you can even feed it to Ayanad, but it cannot be attempted to be regraded, or in the case of upgrading like a Delphinaud item, you can no longer further upgrade it. So this section is pretty exciting to me. A core concern of mine has always been gear gap, and we've really put that on blast here the past few months to XL, and Tryon has even got on board with that. You know, I just sit back and I wonder, in the first year of Archeage, how many people blew up a weapon and said, what the literal just happened? You know, they they really didn't understand what the hell was going on, and who could blame them? That window was so non-informative. Since then, we actually have a regrade window that actually makes a little bit of sense. And now they have increased the chances of regrading lower level stuff. Now in 4.5, they are once again pushing those regrades up for everything below Mythic. Seems like somebody pointed this out back in, well, September. Who was it? Oh, yeah, that was me. And XL basically just looked at my rates and they one-upped me. I added about 20% to all the regrade rates, and they nearly doubled the rates altogether. Finally, that harsh reality of destroying your weapon or armor is gone, and at most now you can just basically damage it. This is actually good news for new players. I can actually see epic weapons becoming cheaper, and the damaged ones even more slightly so. So this is going to preserve some value. If you fail your regrade or damage your item, you still actually have the item. And it is also going to increase the accessibility to higher tiered weapons to newer players. You know, how about you damage your Delphinaud and then you don't have an Ayanad to feed it to, you may just give it to a new player or somebody in your guild or a friend. I'm sure you're not going to give it away, but you may make them a good deal. So all in all, these changes to the regrade rates and the attempt to help the gear gap is going to get a 5 out of 5 rating from me. Okay, so next up is the classic or fresh start server. Okay, so this one is basically specific to Korea, but that doesn't mean I can't really say anything about it. First, we here in North America and EU, we kind of like our fresh start servers. 1, because it brings new players into the game. 2, it gives newer players a chance to experience, at least for a few months, what we felt in the early days of Archeage. Now, however, what eventually happens is the pay-to-win and the gear gap problems that plague this game will sink in, and the majority of players will abandon the game, leaving a shell of a server. In turn, us legacy players have that problem to deal with, and we have to resolve it by merging their auction houses and eventually merging those servers. It's actually a vicious cycle that cannot be fixed until the core game problems are fixed. XL says in Korea, no more fresh start servers because of this. But then they go and they launch a vanilla server in their region instead. I think this is a waste. Why are they spending developer time when the core of the game has so many challenges and they decide to make yet another build of their game? I mean, if you think about it, they have a separate client for North America and Europe. They also have one for Russia, China, Taiwan, Japan, as well as Korea. And so what do? Let's just make another client, another build for Korea. I mean, who does XL think they are? This is not vanilla World of Warcraft. I don't really think XL understands what people liked about their game and actually how gamers engage with their content. Original Archeage was fun before the cash shop, before the rabid and utterly pointless changes to crafting, trade packs, larceny, and fishing, before, in other words, they ruined their own game. Making a new server with a level cap and an armor cap isn't really going to change anything. You can build this as classic, or fresh, or vanilla, but ultimately, until you pay attention to what gamers want, your classic Korea server is going to be a ghost town, just like in North America and EU, as the legacy players always has to absorb these fresh start servers. In my opinion, this change gets the utter crap rating, a 1 out of 5 for wasting developers' time. Okay, so next up is the boss spawn changes. This actually appears to be an effort to prevent factions or player nations from running a server, or as we call it, free farming a server, ultimately forcing most players to never have access to the specific world boss content, and ultimately they end up transferring or quitting to different servers in an effort to maybe get access to it. Now, I've actually already provided a version of a solution for this problem, which is what I called Content Light, in which versions of bosses like the Delphinod Ghost Ship, the Red Dragon, and Kraken were zoned encounters that guilds could participate, allowing their guild members to do this content in a uncontested sort a fashion, and you could consider it as like training for the real thing. You learn the mechanics, you learn what to do and what not to do. The only thing you have left to do is, if you want the real thing with all the real loot, you go out into the real world and you do what you learn to do, but you also do it while other people are attacking you. XL may have actually listened to what I said or thought about it, but they kind of decided to tackle this thing a different way. What they've decided to do here is that when the world boss spawns the first time in a week and it gets killed, so let's call that killed on spawn 1, in spawn 2, whoever killed it is now defending that boss as like it's a member of its own faction. So if you go out, you kill the Red Dragon as a Nuia faction, the next time it spawns that week, it's going to be part of your faction. You can't attack it. Your whole job is to defend it. I mean, that's the way it reads. Once you kill it, you get basically a raid world boss as a pet to help you PvP the shit out of other factions, and you actually get a quest for doing that. Hello? What the hell is XL thinking here? Do they think all of a sudden the potatoes of Server X are going to unite to go kill the Red Dragon simply because the other group can't? No. Potatoes are going to potato. They don't want a PvP, and giving the ruling guild a boss pet to help them kill potatoes isn't going to help at all. Ultimately, this change does nothing to prevent anything but a single faction from getting 2 consecutive kills. This appears to be another XL change, not change, which is basically giving you the same thing, just in a different way. This change, at best, gets a rating of meh, or 3 out of 5. Okay, next up is boss location change and elite mobs. Kind of group these two together. Well, so this thing is titled as boss location changes, but the locations where most of these bosses are spawning seem to be in the same zone. I wonder if what they were trying to say, and it just kind of got lost in translation, was that they do spawn in the same zone but in a different location, and they don't tell us what location. I don't know. Call me confused. Either way, it does appear to have a couple new bosses in here, which will be spawning in Carcassi as well as Rookborn. So there's nothing wrong with that. Another addition to these things is if you actually kill a boss during a war time, it will trigger an elite mob spawn, which don't know how that works. But those elite mobs will be harder to kill, and they will drop a new version of those locked metal crates. For instance, we already have the copper, the ones from the Aurorian mobs, which are the Aurorian chests, the ones from the Jester crate mobs, which are just locked metal chests, and then there's a new one. So it goes copper for the lower boxes, then silver for the Aurorian, and now these new elite mobs are going to be dropping ones that require gold keys. So this really actually seems akin to the Ost mana towers in Auroria. You know, go kill tower, get new mobs drop different loot, but maybe better loot. Not a horrible idea. But I do foresee a problem with having to kill the boss during the war part. I mean, if some faction wants to go kill Hanor, for example, likely they're going to go kill Hanor just for the drops. They aren't going to go tell their faction, okay guys, let's all go to Hasla, let's kill 1,500 mobs to get this zone to go to war, or whatever. No, they're just going to go kill Hanor. If it happens to be during a wartime, great, new mobs. If not, oh well, whatever, we still got what we wanted. Also, remember, bosses have a respawn timer, and zones will go to war kind of on their own as players progress through these zones, killing mobs and doing quests. So ultimately, we're going to have to wait for that magical alignment of 2 cycles of the boss raid respawn timer, as well as the zone to be in war, to align. Then we'll be able to get a look at this new loot. I'm actually always on board with new content, and I feel like XL could actually remove the must be in war requirement, or change it so that what happens is next time the zone goes to war, the mobs spawn instead of the other mobs. So all in all, I'll give these changes a good rating, or a 4 out of 5. Okay, so next up is boss pets. So in 4.5, XL is introducing these new things called raid boss pets, or these are basically battle pets. So you kill the raid boss and you get a small chance to get an item that will grow, or you use to grow, a boss pet like Omnom shows here, which is a red dragon. So this red dragon can grow into one of 3 different versions of pets, presumably, but not hopefully, as daunting as the quest lines for the player nations to grow their own wyvern. Either way, it is more content, and what we do know is that these pets are supposed to be powerful enough to affect raid versus raid PvP. Really? That's going to be interesting. The downside is, again, after whatever task it takes to grow these pets, you get an RNG on which version you get, and it only lasts for 30 days. After which you're required to revive it with some unknown function, likely requiring you to do what you had to do originally to get it to, to drop. So this seems to be a recurring theme that XL is trying to do. They'll give you X item, but then it's going to be on a timer, and they're going to require you to do something to keep using it. We already have this kind of thing in the game with the Synthium soap for underwear and costumes, and in 4.5 we got some more changes, like to the Ayanad earring as well as the dream ring, which we'll talk about here in a minute, but it's going to use the same system. Spoiler. I do like the idea of giving players something new to work for with these raid boss world pets. That's kind of cool. But then they also put the RNG on what you get when you grow it, then the limited time use, and let's face it, it's really just a battle pet. And really, are battle pets all that great? I mean, really, are they? I hope I'm amazed by this one, but with the information that we have at this point, I'm just going to have to simply give this a meh rating. Alright, next up, we've got trading changes, and I'm already laughing because I know how this is going to go. Get ready, traders! A new system that rewards you for hauling packs out of and to zones in conflict. You can buy special cargo in these zones that are in conflict or war, and they have a higher payout than their counterparts. I've actually got a lot of questions. Like, every zone that goes to conflict war now has a trade outpost or some NPCs that spawn somewhere that sell these cargo packs. How much are these packs going to be worth in comparison to, is it 10%? Is it 50% more? How much are they going to be worth? Are they going to be able to buy these things and put them on their land and wait for peacetime? I'm just thinking about this. Wouldn't it be cool if Archeage just had a trade pack system where you could make packs in any zone, and then you could turn that trade pack into any other zone? And then if that zone that you turned them into required you to go through one or multiple PvP zones, you got more money? Oh, wait. Yeah, that's right. That's the system that we used to have. So, is this XL just realizing that the original game had it right, and now they're trying to fix the fix that they put in? I don't know. I do know that this change is not going to have the desired effect that they want of encouraging PvP. Potatoes aren't going to stop potatoing. The servers with the lowest population are going to absolutely love this change. And then the prices on the servers with higher populations are going to pay that price for these free farm servers. This change, while it seems like an attempt to fix a screw up of their own making, misses the mark. I give them credit for recognizing there should be a risk versus reward system in place as it used to be, but with the current state of the game and the servers, this does nothing. So not exactly complete crap, just bad. Bad rating here. Next up, Aurorian gear changes. So Aurorian gear is actually gonna no longer drop. What? Wait. Yep. That cheap old gear that wasn't really that horrible is actually going bye-bye. So instead of Aurorian mobs, we'll actually be dropping illustrious weapons and armor, and they're going to come out at the basic grade. Additionally, the illustrious grade weapons and armors will be available directly for purchase from the armor and weapon merchants. So this is actually a pretty major change, and it's going to actually affect the crafting changes, which we're going to talk about next. But let's just look at this Aurorian gear. So originally this gear was the answer to somewhat of a answer to a gear gap problem, or the gear gap problem, but it really wasn't upgradable to anything meaningful. So at best, this armor was used to fill gaps in certain armor sets, and usually that was to maintain a certain armor grade buff, like the divine cloth buff or the epic leather buff or whatever. So what would happen would people would throw on, like, let's just say an Aurorian belt at rare, so they didn't lose that divine armor buff if they didn't quite have enough money to buy that divine Obsidian or Ayanad belt. So they would just use it to fill that gap. And I think everybody I know has a Aurorian weapon they use as a clicky for that free heal. So on one hand, most people just vendor trash this stuff, or I would salvage it for Archeum if I had the extra labor. On the other hand, some of these pieces actually did have some okay skills, and again, those weapons had that healing clicky, so it wasn't really horrible, but it wasn't super useful. I also like the fact that XL is really trying to address the gear gap issues, which is made evident by this change as well as some of the others that we're going to talk about or have talked about. And they're just really making an effort to give people something that is actually upgradable. So, in my opinion, this gets a 4 out of 5, a good change. Alright, next we're going to talk about crafting changes. Ooh, this is a biggie. So, in 4.5, they are removing the Apprentice and the Artificer tier of crafting, along with the Tier 1 and Tier 2 Obsidian. So along with these changes, they are basically reducing the material requirements for everything Delphinod and below, and increasing the base grade or the outputted grade when you upcraft it. For example, if you upcraft an Epherium to Delphinod in the current RR system 4.0, you would get a basic Delphinod item out of that, unless you used an armorsmith house, in which case there was a small chance that you would get a higher grade, which could be anywhere from grand to rare, and very, 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 very rarely arcane. So in the new system, you will always get the item when you make a Delphinod, it will always come out as arcane. So I'm not sure if it's not talked about here in these patch notes, and I'm not sure if the armor house will actually grant a chance to even get a higher grade than this, but it is absolutely having a higher minimum grade is a step in the right direction. And that is actually something that I had mentioned in my unofficial patch notes, so it is interesting to see that they are paying attention. The other thing that is kind of neat is that the Aranor weapons, when you first craft them up, they're going to now come out as the arcane grade, which means you can completely skip the basic and the grand grade altogether, which, you know, those weren't the most expensive parts of that Aranor crafting, but it's kind of nice that you at least get an arcane version now. So in typical XL fashion, they just really can't make something just simply better. They always have to take something away. And in this case, what they're taking away is the XP value that those things provided when you fed them to an Aranor. What they've actually stated the reason being for doing this is that they want to keep the value of the Aranor weapons that people previously worked on intact. And actually, this is the first time that I actually buy that reasoning. And I stated this as a core concern for Archeage in my unofficial patch notes, which was it is not all for naught. In other words, something that you do now should always remain valuable or have some value. You know, everything that you do has a meaning. So crafting through Delphinod actually will be easier, but again, the XP granted when feeding it to Aranor will be lower. How much? I really don't know. And also remember that in 4.0, we just got that random proc bonus when you're feeding stuff to Aranor or cloaks or whatever. And so maybe that random proc bonus with the reduced XP kind of negates each other, so you're back to the original XP overall, which honestly was pretty freaking brutal. Okay, so now Obsidian. With the removal of Tier 1 and Tier 2 Obsidian, basically the lowest grade possible for Obsidian will be Tier 3. To craft the Tier 3, you're going to need a magnificent item to craft it. Which actually, it does one thing, and it removes the YOLO bar a bit higher. Now, what I'm talking about here is I've actually seen a few people post some concerns, and if you're not aware of this, one of the things that people like to do is craft the Tier 1 Obsidian and just regrade the piss out of those. And then if it blew up, well, at least you weren't breaking an Ayanad, and you pretty much just you're pretty much just out the regrade charms, scrolls, and gold. So if you actually succeeded and you got a divine or better item, you could just ride that bad boy to Tier 7. And you know, when you're upcrafting it, you could actually sometimes pick up another tier while you crafted it up. So this new system moves that bar to YOLO to a minimum of Tier 3. So that means you're going to have some cost associated with items that you destroy. Just not in the regrade mats and scrolls alone. You know, that's not that big of a deal to me, so all in all, these crafting changes feel pretty good. Give them a 4 out of 5. Alright, next up is Crafting Commission System. So this is actually pretty exciting. It's going to be a pretty exciting addition to the game. So what this basically is you can post a request for help to craft something that is either out of your skill range, or maybe you don't even have enough labor to craft it, and then the crafters can go to this board and take on the work for you. And then, of course, there's a small fee involved. I don't know how that is paid. I don't really know. But it looks like this is actually a solution to get something that you need without the risk of having a person steal your shit. There's just a lot of unknowns here, but on the surface, this looks like a great change. Next up is the auction house improvement. So here comes a change in 4.5. Players can now actually buy partial quantities of the stuff that is listed on the auction house, and that's provided that the person that listed it actually allows for that. So what I do like this idea, and I don't have the exact fine details on it, but it should actually make buying exactly what you need a lot easier. I mean, how many times have you had to buy 5 of something when you needed 1, or 4 of something when you needed 2? And sometimes when that's a really expensive something, then you got to turn around and put more money into it to relist the stuff you don't need. Happens to me all the freaking time. So my only concern is if XL does something stupid, like requiring that the person listing the stuff, if they decide to use, yes, you can buy partial amounts, if they start charging for that. I hope they have enough foresight not to require some additional fee for using this feature. So what the information I have now is I'm going to give this a 5 out of 5, a great change. Next up is the skill migration change. So in 4.5, users can now save stat migrations and switch between them as they so choose. So previously, my personal thing is I didn't engage with the migration system at all. I felt like I would end up gimping my character in case I ever wanted to switch to a different class. I didn't want to have all that effort, money, gold, whatever spent to migrate my skills, and then I have to redo it again if I were to ever switch classes. So with this new system, I can actually see more people like me, engaging with the stat migration system. This should actually make trying out more classes, specifically hybrid classes, a little bit more accessible. So in my opinion, this is a great change. Alright, next up, item locking. So in 4.5, Korea is getting an option to lock an item, and that prevents that item from being changed, destroyed, sold, garbaged, whatever. This is actually done with a password protection that Korea uses for their cash shop purchases. I don't really have the opinion that we're actually going to get this in North America or EU, but it is possible. Overall, since we don't really have anything like this currently in our version, it wouldn't make much sense to put it in now. So I'm just going to give this, a meh rating, either or, whatever. Next up is the arena changes. Woo-wee. In 4.5, we're actually finally getting cross-server arenas for all arena types. Wow. Additionally, users will be able to queue up for them as many times as they want. What? Yep, as many times as you want. And this is something that I have personally said a million times in the past. I'm actually told that other people have the same ideas, but basically, simply put, is only your first 5 matches will give you rewards and ranking, scores. After that, you can still queue up and have as much fun as you want, but you just won't receive any additional rewards. Finally, logic prevails. I never understood how a sandbox game could dictate how a person should play or shouldn't play. I'm all for anybody who wants to queue arenas all day. If that's your thing, go for it now. And 4.5, you can. This is an absolutely great change. All right. Next up is guild and player nation size change. Crap, not this crap again. For whatever reason, in 4.5, XL has decided to once again limit guild and player nation sizes. This is something that they have tried in the past, and Tryon fought to have it removed from our version. And at some point, Korea decided, hey, yeah, that makes sense. So they basically followed suit with Tryon and didn't limit it like they are currently doing again. So basically what's going to happen is max level guilds are only allowed to have 50 people. That's half. Like if you're in a level 8, 5, 6, 7, 8 guild, you could half your people. Nations can grow up to 200 people provided that they have 4 different guilds at level 5 or better with max members, and they have 4 castles. So I really think what's going on here is the idea was for XL was they were trying to limit the probability of a single nation or guild running all the content on a server or free farming the server. With the changes to the boss spawns where you tag it, you kill it, you can't do it again. This actually may make sense in Korea, but it does absolutely nothing to prevent this stuff from happening in North America and EU. And ultimately, what it's actually going to do is punish the social or the potato guilds from just getting more potatoes. And what are the potatoes going to do to you? We've been down this road before. We hated it then, and we still hate it now. This gets my absolutely lowest rating, 1 out of 5, utter crap. Alright, next up is the Dream Ring and the Ayanad earring changes. So, with 4.5, they are significantly reducing the amount of materials required to progress through those quest lines. And the material requirements are what looks like as low as 10% of the original requirement, like way, way down. So this should make getting people access to things like the HOA dungeon, which is the heart of the Ayanad dungeon. That's the one on top of the library or at the top of the library floor. It should be more accessible to people. Those quest lines were far too grindy and boring for most people. So certainly with these changes, a person can get those things done in a far more reasonable time frame. This is one of those things that I have personally tried to recommend solutions to these quest lines in the past. So I'm really glad to see XL listening or doing something here. All that said, in true XL fashion, they give and they take. In this case, what you're getting now, instead of an actual Dream Ring or an Ayanad earring, is you get a 30-day version of that ring or earring, in which you have to run those dungeons again multiple times every 30 days to get the mats to refresh the timer. Remember I said earlier that this is a recurring theme? Well, here it is again. However, anybody who has finished these items prior to 4.5 will still have the permanent version of the item, and they are not subject to this timer version crap. Well, it's not crap. It's different. So I suggest, though, that anybody that is very close to finishing up these items, ramp it up now, get them completed. That way you have the permanent item henceforth. So anybody who hasn't started or isn't really that far along, actually just might want to wait it out and take the 30-day version of this item. To be fair, it's going to be far, far easier to complete. So overall, I have to say this change is not great, but it is not bad, so let's give it a good rate. Alright, next up is trial and jury changes. What's happening in 4.5 is the jury names and affiliations, like guild names, are going to be hidden. This actually affects the visuals that you get while you're sitting in the jury seat, as well as the chat in the trial chat channel. So you can basically go tell somebody to eat a bag of dicks, and you can do that completely anonymously. Additionally, the crime points for theft, purpling, murder, those all have been increased. So back in the heyday of Archeage, this probably was a pretty big deal. Voting guilty or trying to get people in the jury to vote guilty with you for somebody that was on trial sometimes caused some backlash. Those people would get salty. They would send their guild after you, and as soon as they got out of jail, they would come after you as well. Just annoying the piss out of you. So this change, maybe they were trying to address that. I don't know. I imagine that this actually probably still happens on some servers sometimes, but I haven't even seen this topic even mentioned in the forums in the last 2 years. So with the dwindling population of Archeage, I'm not sure that this really matters. And as I pointed out above, instead of worrying about the person on trial taking their anger or guilty verdict out on you or your guild, you can now anonymously harass that person in trial chat. Since I don't feel like this is actually much of an issue to begin with, and it will actually kind of flip the problem from those on trial to those in trial to be the harassers, I'm just going to call this a bad change. Wasn't needed. Okay, finally, there are some miscellaneous changes that I'd like to talk about. So in 4.5, rank 7 healing and mana potions now restore percentages instead of flat amounts. That's a pretty good change. The Ayanad shield now actually gets a physical defense stat. That is finally much needed. Like, an Obsidian shield was better than an Ayanad shield. Didn't make no sense. This is a great change. Finally, XL listens. XL will actually be bringing a winter version of the water gun arena that will be using snowballs instead of water. And like I said, we're going to probably get this patch around summer. So we got water in winter and snowballs in summer. Alright. Another change, skill trees are going to be unlocked at 7 and 15 instead of 5 and 10. Okay. Who asked what? Who asked for that? Whatever. The difficulty of Thunderwing Titan has been changed. There's going to be a new flight path, as well as combat techniques. It's whatever. People are just going to adapt. Whatever. Another meh change to me. Honor for killing players in conflict and war zones has been increased. I think that's a good change. More honor. Right? Well, nothing wrong with that. Zones now cycle through conflict in 10 minutes instead of 30 minutes. Okay, that's a good change. Well, there you go. That's everything that we know at this point. I once again have to thank Mark at Omnon.io for his awesome effort and work he does to bring all this information to us here in the community. So if you haven't read this stuff yourself, a link will be in the video description. But at this point, I'm also curious as to what you guys feel like are the most important or least important things that are getting changed. Do you think that XL is actually listening to the players? I mean, I look at all this stuff and I'm like, you know, I mentioned a lot of this stuff. You know, did they listen to me? Or was it just so many people out there saying the same thing that they had to listen? I don't know, but are they listening? You tell me. Many of the specific things that I actually addressed in my 5.0 unofficial patch note series were actually touched on, as I alluded to, and some of the suggestions actually being just copy-pasted from what I said are being brought into here, but they also decided to address some of those challenges in a different way. It is certainly interesting to see. And remember, the players really started bringing this stuff up, these key issues like the gear gap, lack of content, way back in October, late October, early September. And at that time, 4.0 was already done and out in Korea. So this is actually the earliest patch we could have expected any of the things that we were talking about back then to be addressed. So let me know what you guys think about this stuff. All these changes. What do you like? What do you hate? Let me know. Remember to like and subscribe on your way out. You can also follow me on Twitch, Twitter, as well as Discord. And if you'd like to give me a little special support, you can do so by becoming a Patreon for as little as $1. Until next time, this is September saying, be well.